Halifax's real estate market isn't just tough right now. It's borderline brutal for first-time home buyers. Demand is surging, supply is critically low, and prices continue to rise even though many speculated that we would see a correction in 2025. If you're trying to buy your first home in Halifax, you're not just competing with other buyers, you're racing against a market that is running away from you. In this video, you're going to hear the truth, the real truth about buying your first home in Halifax. And spoiler alert, it is not easy, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. And make sure you stick around till the end because I'm going to circle back around and I'm going to give you some advice on what you can do to better position yourself to set yourself up for success in a very tough market. But just before I get into it, if you're new here, my name's Andrew Stevens. I've been a realtor in Halifax for over 10 years. And if you'd like to be educated on the Halifax and Nova Scotia real estate market, then hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. And if you're thinking about buying your first home in Halifax and you'd like to get in touch with me for some guidance, you can reach out to me anytime in the Calendly link below. So let's start with the numbers because they paint a pretty clear picture of what we're seeing on the ground level, and it gives some context to this video overall. So far in 2025, if I look at listings that were listed up to $500,000. Now, I'm going to use this number because a lot of first-time home buyers that are coming my way are approved somewhere in the realm of $350,000 to $500,000. Now, obviously, the lower you are in that price range, the more difficult and more competitive that it is. So I'm going to cap it at $500,000 and I'm going to say HRM proper. So I'm not going all the way out to like Muscatawbin or Hubbards or something like that. I'm keeping it in the realm of Sackville, Dartmouth, Halifax, Bedford, Timberley, Eastern Passage, kind of, 30 minutes into the Halifax downtown core. So far this year, we've only had 212 sales that were listed under $500,000 in that pocket in the HRM. And so far, 71% of them sold for over the asking price. And while that's not quite as bad as what we saw in the peak of the market during kind of the pandemic years in 2022, where 98% of the homes sold for over the asking price, but it is higher than 2024 when we saw 66% of the homes sell for over the asking price in this price range of the same time period, and 2023 when we saw 57% of the homes sell for over the asking price. Now, here's maybe what a lot of people are not expecting is that although, everything is going on right now in the world and it's crazy and all this uncertainty and so on, we are seeing price points on average so far this year in the HRM for single family homes in general that are higher now than we saw at the peak in 2022. So for context, so far at the time of filming this video in HRM, we're seeing an average sale price on a single family home of about $636,000. Whereas at the peak in April of 2022, we were looking at about $614,000. So although a lot of people sat on the sidelines and wanted things to improve, and while they did for a short period of time in 2023 and the early part of 2024, right now we're seeing prices that are higher than they were at the peak of the COVID market. So a lot of buyers over the last couple of years maybe were on the fence and wanted to wait for things to slow down or see some price corrections. But unfortunately, that's led to a very high demand market right now. And a lot of buyers are out there fighting for these homes that are listed under $500,000. Now, a big reason this is all happening is because there is far more demand than supply. So in this price range right now across the HRM, we are in an extreme seller's market. We're seeing inventory levels of about 1.1 or 1.2 months. So in other words, if we as realtors stopped listing properties tomorrow, it would only take about a month for everything under $500,000 in the HRM to sell, and there would be nothing left for buyers to look at. So is demand down from, say, those peak years during the pandemic? Yeah, sure. But overall, we have very little supply for the demand that we have. So we are still in a very heated seller's market in this price range. So it's very competitive, and this is driving a lot of bidding wars, which is leading us to some of the things that I'm seeing on the ground level. So for context, here's kind of a couple things I've been seeing as of late. First of all, anything that's like, a semi in Sackville or Bedford, or maybe like a small 1.5 story in Dartmouth or something along these lines of what these young couples, young professionals, or first-time home buyers are looking at. They are generally speaking using the listing strategy of underpricing a little bit and forcing the buyer's hand to put a very strong offer forward, and they're holding offers to a deadline, and this is creating bidding wars. The last 3 or 4 that I've dealt with in the kind of $400,000 to $450,000 price range, I've been seeing anywhere from 6 to 12 offers, and I've heard some other stories of ones I was not directly involved with that were getting more like 15 or 20 offers. So it's not to say that it's, at that level that we were seeing in 2021 or 2022. But again, it's still very, very busy. Now, one thing I've been seeing that, in my opinion, is very alarming is that sometimes it seems as though there is not any context behind kind of the rhyme or reason of why a property is selling where it is selling. So, for example, I recently listed a home in Eastern Passage, and I had 2 kind of comparables to draw on. These 3 homes were virtually identical. They're kind of, split level, semi-detached properties, only 1 street apart from each other. And one of them was listed at $399 and sold for, I think it was $430,000. There was another one that was a little bit nicer and had a little bit more updates that was listed at $399 as well and sold for $450,000. Now, when I was looking at my own listing, I was thinking we were going to end up somewhere around the $440,000 mark. Both of these other sales are very comparable. They happened very recently, like in the last 30 to 45 days. And when I'm looking at the comparable sales, mine is right kind of in between them. It's not quite as nice as the one that sold for 450, maybe not as many updates. And then the one that sold for 430, it's a little bit nicer than that one. So when you're looking at some of these homes, they're very comparable. It's, pretty easy to determine roughly where the market value should be. However, I got more money for my listing than I was expecting, and it actually sold for quite a bit higher than the one that was at 450. And here's my point. There's not really a rhyme or reason as to why that would sell there, but at the end of the day, it's worth what a willing buyer is willing to pay and what a willing seller is willing to accept. So what I'm seeing out there is buyers that are pre-approved to, let's say, 450, and it's a very difficult market. They've probably lost in competing offers several times, and now they're at a point where they just want to throw something at the wall, get it to stick, and get into the market and build that equity. Now, if you're somebody who's going to live in a home for 5 to 10 years and you're going to overpay by maybe $10,000, I wouldn't necessarily say that's the end of the world if you get into the market and you start building equity. But this can be problematic because it's affecting the market moving forward, even though that home maybe shouldn't have sold as high as it did. But again, at the end of the day, it's worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. But I'm seeing a lot of sales out there that when I'm crunching the numbers, it's not quite adding up to what I would expect from a logical perspective. However, I think a lot of buyers in this price range right now are getting very emotional, and they're just throwing big numbers at it because they're getting tired of losing. Maybe they need a home, maybe their lease is ending, and there's all kinds of factors that might play into this. And at the end of the day, it only takes one frustrated buyer to throw a big number at the wall to kind of inflate that price point, but that inflated price point could affect a lot of other future sale prices moving forward in those markets. So it's just something to watch, and it's kind of an alarming trend overall that I'm seeing. But right now, this price range is so difficult that I'm not shocked that people are getting emotional. Maybe their agents are telling them that it's worth that. I don't know. At the end of the day, what I do for my buyers is I give them the facts and I let them make the decision. We have a very open, transparent conversation about it. And yeah, sometimes I have clients that are willing to pay a little bit more than I necessarily think they should. But at the end of the day, it's all about where their comfort lies and what, their overall situation is. So that's just one example of many of kind of something that is worrying me about this price range moving forward. And truth be told, this is an extremely difficult price range right now. You need to make sure your expectations are in line with reality. And you probably need to be braced for some disappointment before you get an accepted offer. But that's not to say it's impossible, and it's definitely not. We're doing a lot of deals in this price range still with the market conditions the way they are. So the question is, what can you do as a buyer to better position yourself for success in a very difficult market. So first off, you want to be pre-approved. This is like a no-brainer. You're going nowhere fast if you're not willing to get pre-approved before you're starting your house hunting journey in this kind of a price range. And I would also suggest that you need a very good broker. The difference of a broker that can turn it around for you in, let's say, 5 to 7 business days versus somebody asking for 10 business days is probably going to be the difference of you getting a home or not getting a home. Period. If you're asking for 2 weeks, your offer is probably going to be declined unless you're way above the price of anybody else in the market. You need to have quick turnaround times on your conditions. Number 2, you want to make sure you're working with an experienced agent. Not going through the listing agent, not working with somebody who has no idea what they're doing. You need to be working with somebody who's experienced, who can help you set your offer in a place where it's going to be competitive. I can tell you that a lot of offers are written in a way, and they're asking for documents or the certain timelines they're working with or a certain way that they're going about the process is basically, just making it so that offer is not even going to be considered right off the hop because it's not giving any confidence to the seller's agent or the sellers when they're reviewing their offer. So it's super important to be working with somebody experienced that can guide you through the process, that can, submit an offer in a pocket where it's going to be competitive as long as your price range is, where it needs to be. Obviously, money talks, but there's a lot of other things you can do in your offers to make them stand out amongst the pack. You're also going to want to be as flexible as possible, especially on the closing date, to meet what the seller wants. Your offer is going to stand out if it's everything the seller's looking for, as long as the price is relatively in the range of the other offers. But I know that this is situational. You can only do so much. But in a perfect world, we're going to give the seller exactly what they want for a closing date and to line everything up as appropriately as possible for what they are looking for. And that'll give you the best chance of success. And when you find the right home, you're going to want to put your best foot forward. So it's not to say you need to put your max budget towards every single home. But what I'm saying is when you write an offer in a competing offer situation, you want to be in there at a price point that, regardless of the outcome, you're happy. You gave it your all, you put your best foot forward. So maybe that's a certain price point, and if you lose by $5,000, it's like, well, okay, that's fine. We weren't willing to pay that price anyway. Or if you get it, you're extremely happy that you got the home in the first place. So again, that doesn't mean throw your max budget at every single home that comes up. It just means put your best foot forward and put your best offer on the table so that you have no regrets regardless of the outcome. And the last thing I want to say is just make sure that you have your expectations in line with reality. At the $400,000 or $450,000 price point, there is always going to be something, wrong with the home. And it's not to say it's something wrong, but there's going to be some work that needs to be done. And it's basically going to be this way on any home you're looking at for the most part in the HRM. So it's just a matter of finding something that best fits your needs, that has some work that you can kind of pick away at over the years. Or maybe it needs a roof to be done, but your uncle is a roofer and he can help you with that, or, something like that. So there's always going to be work to be done. It's a matter of what work are you willing to live with and what work are you willing to take on and what works for you and your budget. But your expectations have to be in line with reality. You are not going to get like an HGTV stunner home at $450,000 right now. It's just not realistic based on the overall conditions in the HRM. And before I let you go, there's just one more thing I want to talk about, and it's a very harsh reality right now, or a harsh truth, and that is that this overall video is probably going to withstand the test of time over the 2025 real estate market. I don't foresee this getting much easier for first-time home buyers, especially anytime in the foreseeable future. Could we see the market soften a little bit with everything going on with tariffs and economics and politically and all these things? Yeah, maybe. Do I think it's going to be softening in these kind of lower price ranges that most first-time homebuyers are looking in? No, I don't. And if I look at most forecasts, let's say CMHC and CREA and a couple of the big banks, they are all projecting price increases over the next 3 years in the HRM. And I am also projecting the same thing. I predicted that we were going to see price ranges of $600,000 or higher this year in the HRM as an average price point, and we are currently on pace for that. So I don't think it's going to get very much easier anytime in the foreseeable future. So by waiting, you may just be getting priced out of the market even further, because the reality is the home prices the way they're growing right now is certainly outpacing that of the wage growth. So unless you're moving up the corporate ladder, and if you're just getting, general kind of wage increases year over year, in terms of a raise, it's not likely that you're going to close that gap on affordability anytime in the foreseeable future. And let's say even if the rates start coming down, that's probably just going to surge more demand into the market in these lower price ranges because more people will qualify for homes. And there's been some recent mortgage changes that allow more people to qualify as well. So I don't foresee the demand really shrinking in this area. I don't foresee the supply really growing very much in this area. So it's probably going to continue to get more difficult. And I will say this. That's not to pressure you into buying a home. Only you know when it's right. But the reality is the quicker you get into the market, the quicker you're building that equity, the quicker you're, gaining equity on those price value increases instead of sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to change that is not likely to change in the first place. Now, if you're looking to buy your first home and you want some guidance with that, don't forget you can reach out to me anytime in the Calendly link below, and you can book a buyer consult with me. We can chat about the process and what that's looking like. And I'm curious to hear from you. If you've bought your first home in the last, let's say, year in HRM, what was your experience like? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. I know it's a bit of a bloodbath out there in this market, but if you're looking in this price range, keep your head up. Good things will happen to those who are persistent, to those who persevere through it, and just keep your foot on the gas, and eventually you'll get a spot that you love and you'll get into your first home and you'll be, full of joy, and you'll start building that equity, and then you can work your way up the property ladder in years to come. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support, and have a great day.